but the one who endures to the end will be saved. You know, there's a lot that disciples have to endure in this reading about Jesus's disciples being given their first mission. They go out in pairs, it looks like. They go out under-resourced and stay in other people's houses, eating what they're given. They're persecuted by the civil religious authorities. They're kicked out of their own families. They're supposed to represent themselves at their trials. And all of that so they can cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, and cast out demons. A fairly high-risk occupation then and now. For a group of people who are supposed to be wise as serpents, this doesn't seem like a very smart play. I mean, if the Brookline Community Church developed a reputation for walking around barefoot, eating and sleeping at other people's houses, I'm not sure how many people would rush to Sunday morning worship. And I'm not sure how much advancement you'd see in this world if you decided to take that on as your daily gig. But if you buy my argument that Jesus calls us to live in the real world, then you have to ask, why is Jesus asking this of his disciples then and now? Why is Jesus asking for so much more endurance? Well, obviously, in part, because the core of the disciples' job is to proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near, is what it says in Matthew. Then and now, that is not an easy message to proclaim or to hear. Not with protests against police brutality sparking more videos of police brutality. Not with the details of the economic collapse becoming clearer every day. Not with deaths from COVID-19 beginning to rise in places after a slow decline. But like many things in Jesus' ministry, there's more happening here than we realize initially. We need to see that Jesus picks his disciples, and not because they have some amazing history or some crazy skills, but because they have problematic histories and no skills. One of the disciples is Matthew, the tax collector. Now, tax collectors in those days had contracts where they would provide a set amount of taxes to the Roman imperial treasury. Whatever additional money they could squeeze out of people, they got to keep. The people who did the actual collection, like Matthew, were usually desperately poor, taking one of the lowest status and most hated jobs and moving the cash up a chain of individuals who were getting wealthier and wealthier. And yet, even as a disciple of Jesus, one of the original 12, Matthew doesn't get to leave his past behind. He's still Matthew the tax collector, the guy who helped keep the Roman Empire in place. Among the other disciples is Simon the Canaanian, which doesn't mean he's from Cana. It means he was a zealot, which means he was working to overthrow the Roman Empire's hold on the homeland of Israel. Depending on your perspective, he was a terrorist or a freedom fighter, and he was in violent opposition to Matthew, the tax collector. So Jesus chose you not in spite of your past, but because of it. Whatever you wanted to leave behind in your past is exactly why Jesus chose you to be a disciple. Whatever from your past puts you in opposition with others who are also disciples, that is exactly why Jesus chose you to be a disciple. Jesus sends you out as a disciple without walking around money, without any resources, not even a change of underwear. The people you bring the proclamation of the kingdom to, they'll feed you and give you a place to sleep for a night. And you're to travel light, so light that a puff of wind seems like it might blow you away. But without all that baggage that might make you independent, here's what you can promise. You can promise that being a follower of Jesus will not make you wealthy or powerful or secure. You can promise them that they will have nothing at their disposal other than the authority that Jesus will grant to them too. And you can promise them that nothing will hold them back any longer, not even death. Because through you, Jesus is offering them life in the kingdom of God. Now, Jesus wants to be clear with you, with me, with all of us, that being his disciple, going out into the world to proclaim the kingdom of God, is an exercise in rejection. The state will be threatened by people who aren't afraid of its power. The church will be threatened by people who aren't afraid of its condemnation. Your family will be threatened because you have an allegiance to a tribe other than the one you were born into. Jesus wants you to be clear that if you are rejected, you're probably doing this disciple thing correctly. And Jesus wants you to endure all that. People don't agree with you. People who are constantly throwing your past in your face and telling you you're unqualified. Jesus wants you to endure not having enough resources to get anything productive done. Jesus wants you to endure rejection on every scale possible, from your nation to your religion to your family. Jesus asks for endurance from you and from every other disciple. Because if you can endure, when you see the crowds, you will have compassion for them because they are harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd, as it says in Matthew. If you can endure, they will cease to be harassed and helpless, wearied and laid prostrate on the ground. Your endurance will allow them to transform into an abundant harvest. You'll see them as flourishing, as vital, as something that brings life to the community, once you see them as Jesus sees them. And that's what they will become. And the kingdom you are proclaiming will come a little nearer. So endure for just a little longer. Carry your past a little further down the road. Don't worry about the resources you don't have that would make proclaiming the arrival of the kingdom so much easier. Endure a bit more as you proclaim and are rejected by everyone. Because the one who endures to the end will be saved. And in your salvation is the salvation of the world.